Amazing billionaire widower discovers shocking secret about his son's new teacher after 10 years. Jack Thompson had built his empire with sheer willpower and relentless ambition. Yet here he stood on the precipice of an entirely different battleground: parenthood. In their quiet suburban home he felt the absence of warmth, the chasm left by his wife's death. With his teenage son Ethan spiraling into a world that felt larger and more intimidating than ever, Jack's wealth seemed meaningless in the shadow of their growing estrangement. Every day was a testament to Jack's powerlessness, a battle he couldn't win with money or influence. As he entered the softly lit school corridor, Jack felt the weight of judgment hang over him, tightening like a noose. He was here to meet Ethan's teachers, to reach into his son's life and begin healing the fractures that had grown since their abrupt move to public school. With every step, his heart raced, not from fear but from a growing sense of inadequacy. Ethan was struggling with a loneliness Jack couldn't comprehend. The moment he met Miss Sarah Blake, Jack knew he had stumbled upon something extraordinary. She had a passion for teaching that reminded Jack of their long-lost vigor of his youth. Her smile broke through the sterile chatter of the school life. She truly cared about her students in a system that was often indifferent. Jack couldn't help but admire her dedication. But this feeling twisted in his gut. Was it admiration or desire? He hesitated, grappling with an unwanted attraction blooming alongside a need to forge a genuine connection for Ethan's sake. Would she see through his facade, the billionaire benefactor trying to rescue a lost boy? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Jack sat in his plush office chair later that evening, his mind raced with conflicting emotions. He had pledged to support Sarah anonymously, a way to connect without the metrics of wealth. But the deeper he got, the more tangled he felt. His loyalty to Ethan slowly churned with a sense of betrayal toward his late wife. And then the revelation crashed down like a thunderclap. Sarah Blake had a story that intertwined with his family's history. The air around him thickened as guilt pierced his consciousness. What could he say? Should he reveal what he knew or shield Sarah from a past that could shatter their newfound connection? Questions swallowed him whole. With each fleeting thought he could see Ethan struggling more. His solitude an echo of Jack's own grief. The looming school charity event only heightened his turmoil. Would attending with Sarah invite disaster upon him? Or was this the opportunity to finally support Ethan's social standing? Torn between two worlds, Jack's internal conflict deepened. Would he expose the secret that could either sabotage their bond or bring them closer? Jack's heart drummed, the weight of moral quandaries settling heavily in his chest. As anguish mounted, he realized life's connections might be the only thing that truly mattered, but at what cost? Outside his window, dusk swallowed the horizon. And just like that, he resolved to speak, but the truth hung unspoken on his lips, a knife poised to slice through the delicate fabric of their lives. Jack stared at the screen on his desk, the shimmering cursor blinking like the heartbeat of his anxieties. He had crafted hundreds of business proposals, yet this simple text felt indomitable. How could he possibly communicate the truth without dismantling everything he'd just begun to rebuild? His relationship with Ethan, and now his tentative connection with Sarah. The image of Ethan's sullen expression played through his mind. Jack had learned that wealth could not buy understanding or acceptance, and here was Sarah, a bridge between his son and the world that Jack had long ceased to navigate. Yet, the weight of unspoken truths anchored him. An abyss loomed beneath the delicate bond he was trying to forge. What he initially perceived as admiration toward Sarah had morphed into something more complex, a blend of respect and a burgeoning attraction that both excited and terrified him. He couldn't afford to focus on those feelings. Ethan needed a role model, not just another disappointment masked by the items on the pedestal Jack had cultivated his whole life. That night, insomnia settled in, tugging at his thoughts, unveiling layers of uncertainty he had buried deeply. He moved through his home like a ghost, each creak of the floorboards reverberating in the suffocating silence. As he stared into the living room, memories filled the corner's family gatherings that now seemed like ancient history, laughter that had faded, and an emptiness that echoed louder than his instincts to rebel against vulnerability. The work obligations that once filled his time with purpose now felt like shackles. And that when it struck him, he was not just avoiding confronting his attraction to Sarah. He was resisting the undeniable truth about himself. Behind the gloss of his professional success, anger and grief masked deeper fears. Who was he outside of business meetings and corporate deals? It was time for a change. Jack pictured himself in the classroom, how he could champion Ethan's hopes and dreams, but also support Sarah's efforts beyond mere financial assistance. Ideas of reteaching old lessons began to brew. This connection could be larger than any part of his past. He picked up a pen, determined to write a letter to Sarah, expressing his wish to meet and discuss how he could better support not just Ethan but also her mission in shaping young minds. With the first stroke of the pen, a surge of clarity washed over him. Wouldn't it be freeing to pursue a connection built on honesty rather than deceit? Every word became an act of bravery. He wasn't merely a billionaire in a world of privilege. Instead, he could emerge as an ally, empowered by the desire to foster real relationships. But doubt crept back in. What if Sarah struggled with the past just as he did? Would she see him as a man motivated by compassion, or merely a benefactor with ulterior motives? The sun rose with a light that felt like renewal, illuminating the path ahead. He couldn't continue running away from the ghosts of yesterday. Stepping into Sarah's life meant risking it all, encountering truths that demanded reckoning. He sent the letter, his heart racing as he envisioned her reading his words. Jack leaned back, awaiting the response that could change everything. Little did he know, the response would not only challenge his intentions, but also reveal intricacies about Ethan that would test the fragile foundation he was striving to build. He had opened the door, but now the question hung palpably in the air. Had he pushed too far too fast? Jack spent the next few days in a restless haze, every hour stretching like a taut wire, particularly as he awaited Sarah's response. He felt like a kite, caught in a gust of wind, both exhilarating and terrifying. His thoughts flitted between hopeful fantasies of what a partnership with Sarah might bring, and the possible repercussions of pursuing something deeper. At work, Jack went through the motions, yet the normal rhythm no longer soothed him. Meetings blurred into a cascade of voices and numbers. As he flipped through pages of proposals, his mind kept circling back to the letter he'd written. Each passing moment drummed up a growing sense of urgency within him, not merely for a reply, but for action. Something had shifted in his psyche, a quiet resolve that he could no longer ignore. He caught sight of Ethan at dinner, his son absorbed in his phone, laughter emanating from whatever game or app held his attention. That familiar pang twisted in Jack's gut. His son was drifting, perhaps further away than he had realized. The last thing he desired was for Ethan to feel isolated, especially when Jack himself understood that loneliness all too well. They were two vessels drifting in different seas, and he could either cast a line to connect with Ethan or risk losing him to the dark tides of adolescence. The next morning, as dawn broke, Jack decided it was time to act. He logged into his old teaching platform and began crafting a lesson plan. It was an effort to re-engage with the part of himself that had found joy in imparting knowledge. Perhaps if he shared his own experiences with Ethan, offered up some lessons from his life, it could sow the seeds for trust between them. He wanted to show Ethan the man he could be, not just the figure stuck in his past mistakes. As he poured himself into the draft, Jack felt emboldened. Engaging with the material reignited a spark he thought had long been extinguished. It was as if he was rediscovering pieces of himself, his passions, his purpose long buried beneath layers of greed and social pretense. He had been so focused on external achievements that he had forsaken the inner work of nurturing relationships. The thrilling idea of inviting Ethan to this process came to him next. Why not co-create this journey together? Jack envisioned them sitting side by side, crafting lessons rooted in real-world challenges and emotional learning. They could speak openly about dreams, aspirations, and the missteps along the way. The thought was revolutionary. It hinged not on authority but on collaboration. But just as Jack felt momentum, doubt creeped back in. Where would this journey lead? What if Ethan resisted? He knew too well how teenagers could guard their worlds. The fear of rejection loomed over him like a rain cloud threatening to soak everything he had started to build. What if his son had grown tired of him? A sudden ping distracted him. A notification flashing on his phone snapped him from his reverie. Glancing down, he felt a rush of adrenaline as he saw Sarah's name. She had replied. Jack's heart raced, but with it came hesitation. A part of him yearned to dive headfirst into her words, to unearth her thoughts and feelings, while another part warned him of the blade of uncertainty he might cut himself on. He took a deep breath, hands trembling slightly as he opened the message. The screen flickered to life, revealing a single sentence. I received your letter, Jack. Can we meet? I have something important to share. A wave of determination surged through him. This meeting could alter the course of his relationship with Sarah and perhaps with Ethan too. The moment had come. He would face whatever unfolded next, ready to confront truths that could not only break his facade, but also redefine his existence. The stakes were high, but he could not escape the profound truth. He had to forge connections, face his fears, and ultimately, discover the kind of man he wanted to be in the lives of those he cared for. His resolve strengthening, Jack felt the tether of fear loosening, and now the question crystallized in his mind. What secrets lay beneath Sarah's important share? Jack sat at his kitchen table, the morning sun filtering through the blinds, casting striped shadows on the surface. Every tick of the clock was deafening. Anticipation thrummed in his veins. He briefly considered canceling the meeting with Sarah, undertaking the easier path of avoidance. But deep down he recognized that would only prolong the uncertainty, and he'd spent too long retreating from difficult situations. As he prepared his thoughts, he forced himself to recall the lessons he had drafted for Ethan. Openness, honesty, vulnerability. If he was to embody those principles, he couldn't shy away from confronting his feelings. The potential impact of this meeting weighed on him heavily. It might be the turning point not just for him but for Ethan as well. How could he preach authenticity without practicing it? His phone buzzed again, this time with a reminder for their meeting. The corner of Jack's mouth twitched as a nervous smile flashed across his face. Confidence might be a performance he donned, but he knew today he had to be authentic. He had to show not just his willingness to be vulnerable, but also his readiness to embrace life as it came. The cafe where they agreed to meet was busy, the aroma of coffee and baked goods mingling in the air. Jack arrived early, settling at a table in the corner where he could watch the door. He fidgeted with the cuff of his shirt, his mind racing with the many what-ifs. When Sarah arrived, Jack was struck by how her presence filled the space. She appeared both fierce and approachable, a blend that both intrigued and intimidated him. She greeted him with a warm smile, but Jack couldn't shake the sense that there was a weight behind her eyes. Thank you for agreeing to meet, she said as they shared an awkward embrace. Absolutely. I've been looking forward to it, Jack replied, attempting to sound enthusiastic. As Sarah settled into her chair, Jack could see the turmoil behind her composed demeanor. Her gaze was intense, as she opened a lake of thoughts that hadn't yet revealed themselves. I received your letter, and it made me see how much we've both changed over these years, she began, her voice steady but laced with vulnerability. Just as he was about to respond, he hesitated. This was not just an opportunity for revelation. It was also a moment for introspection. Jack was aware he needed boundaries but still craved a connection. It's funny, I've spent so much time reflecting, hoping to understand what I want out of life, out of relationships, he confessed. That's important, Jack, Sarah said, her eyes softening. But it's also crucial to embrace the scars left by past experiences. It's how we grow. Her words echoed the struggles he harbored, prompting the question of whether he was truly ready to face the shadows of his past. Could he trust Sarah again? And more importantly, was he strong enough to face what lay ahead as the possibility of their connection revived? As they exchanged stories, laughter punctuating their conversation like notes in a song, Jack's trepidation ebbed, replaced by an understanding that this was more than a rekindling of old flames. It was a chance to reshape their futures. However, the spirit of growth brought along its shadows. He recalled Ethan's distant demeanor, the gulf that had widened between them. Sarah sensed Jack's momentary shift in focus, and she pressed, I believe we can help each other become better, Jack. But there's something I need to tell you. Something about your son. A cold wave of dread washed over him as her words sank in. What could be so significant that it tied the two of them together? Just as he braced himself for the possible revelations, The sense of vulnerability he had cultivated came crashing into a more profound uncertainty. "Go on," he encouraged, though the tension in his voice betrayed him. The stakes heightened, and Jack felt the weight of their consequences. Could this connection evolve? Or would it fracture under truth's relentless scrutiny? The time had come to face whatever was on the other side of this moment. The question reverberated in his mind. What could possibly be the connection between his son and Sarah's revelation? Jack leaned forward, straining to gather the words that Sarah carefully measured with her breath. The cafe noise faded into a hazy background, but his heart thudded loudly in his ears. He needed clarity both for himself and for Ethan. Sarah's fingers intertwined nervously as she spoke. "Ethan is struggling, Jack," she began, her voice low and steady. "He's been coming to me with his concerns, things he hasn't voiced to you." "What do you mean?" Jack's voice was a mixture of concern and disbelief. This was not how he anticipated the conversation unfolding. Wasn't Sarah supposed to be there to reconnect, to share burdens together? Instead, the shadow of his son's unease loomed directly before him. "It's not just about schoolwork. He's worried about you, about the past, about how it affects both of you," she clarified, her gaze direct but compassionate. Jack felt a mix of defensiveness and sorrow. I didn't know he felt that way. The admission tasted bitter on his tongue. "We've always talked openly, haven't we? He loves you, Jack, and that's what makes this hard for him. He's sensing the unresolved feelings between us, and it's unsettling him," Sarah said, her words piercing through the fog of Jack's mind. "Has he talked about me to you? What did he say?" Jack asked, urgency coloring his tone. Despite his professional veneer, his fatherly instincts stirred uneasily within him. The notion that his son was holding on to something painful made Jack's throat tighten. "Only bits and pieces. He's hesitant, but he cares deeply. He sees the emotional distance you've created since." She let the last word hang in the air, a fragile reminder of losses lingering like shadows. Jack took a breath, the weight of unresolved grief settling heavily around them. He rubbed the back of his neck, reflecting on all the moments that had slipped past him while he focused on surface-level recovery. "I thought I was doing better, not wanting him to feel burdened by my sadness," he confessed, almost to himself. "Yet by trying to protect him, you might be pushing him away," Sarah gently said, her tone a soft invitation rather than a sharp judgment. Jack nodded slowly, the realization washing over him. He also recognized something else, the opportunity for healing. The connection he felt with Sarah was charging back to life, not as mere nostalgia but as a foundation for mutual growth. "Why didn't you tell me before?" Jack whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't want to overstep, Jack. But I believe we owe it to him to confront our past and shape our future," she urged, her earnest gaze clear and unwavering. The possibilities started swirling in Jack's mind. Conversations with Ethan, vulnerability that might just bridge the gap, the chance to step out from the shadows. But dread still lingered. What also lay under the surface of this revelation? "Do you think he'll talk to you again if I ask him?" Jack ventured, suddenly aware that his own journey was intertwined with Sarah's influence on Ethan. "Eventually, if you're honest with him about your struggles as well. It's the path to rebuilding trust," she replied. "You must be willing to face the truths together." Jack's internal conflict intensified. Could he share his vulnerabilities not just with Ethan, but in partnership with Sarah? It frightened him, this potential interplay of their lives. At the same time, it awakened a flicker of hope. "What about you, Sarah?" he asked, his voice steadying. "What do you want from this connection? Why step back into the chaos?" Sarah hesitated, a shadow crossing her face. "Because I believe in the possibility of us, not just for me, but for you and Ethan. But I need to know you're ready. You can't keep hiding behind your walls." A silence enveloped them, filled with unspoken truths and immense potential. Jack felt the weight of her honesty ignite a spark within him. It was time for him to start acting on the lessons he'd long preached. "I'm ready," he said, knowing that despite the lingering doubts, he had to reach for authenticity. As they sat in that bustling cafe with the aroma of coffee wafting around, Jack made a silent vow. He would rebuild his connection with Ethan first, and his heart stirred at the thought of confronting more than just his past. He felt a deeper urgency creeping in. What did it truly mean to take the leap into a future defined by connection and honesty? And with each moment of clarity, a new question bubbled up demanding attention. What if bearing his own scars meant he could finally help Ethan face his? Jack left the cafe, the weight of Sarah's words swirling in his mind like leaves caught in a whirlwind. Each step felt heavier yet purposeful, propelling him toward a confrontation he could no longer avoid. Standing outside, he took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill his lungs and wash over his senses. There was no escaping the truth any longer. He had to face Ethan. As he drove home, Jack's thoughts shifted rapidly between self-doubt and determination. What would he say to his son? How could he articulate his own struggles while also listening to Ethan's fears? He glanced momentarily at the reflection of himself in the rearview mirror, the familiar features tinged with grief. But there was something different in his eyes now. An ember of resolve flickered behind the trauma. Arriving at home, Jack felt a mixture of warmth and anxiety wash over him. The inviting light of their living room beckoned him to embrace the familiar sanctuary, though he knew comfort wouldn't ease the impending conversation. He stepped through the door and was greeted by the sound of Ethan engaged in a video game, laughter emanating from his son's room. That laughter shattered Jack's heart and emboldened him simultaneously. He needed to draw closer. Jack knocked lightly on Ethan's door, hesitating for a moment before entering. The room was cluttered, remnants of teenage hobbies and interests scattered everywhere. Ethan looked up, his face illuminated by the screen's glow. "Hey Dad, wanna join?" His tone was casual, almost dismissive, but Jack could read the undercurrents. The eager excitement he hoped to receive fell flat. "Mind if I sit for a minute?" Jack asked, trying to suppress the tremor in his voice as he lowered himself onto the edge of the bed. "Sure, what's up?" Ethan versioned his attention momentarily to Jack, though his fingers danced over the controller. "Can we talk?" Jack said, the weight of the question hanging in the air like a heavy fog. Ethan shrugged, his focus unwavering, but Jack pressed on. "I heard from Sarah today. She mentioned you've been struggling." Ethan immediately stiffened. The conversation was a fork in the road, and Jack felt the palpable resistance building. "You shouldn't have to talk to her about me," Ethan replied, his voice slightly raised. "Everything is fine." Jack swallowed hard, fighting back the rising tide of frustration that threatened to crash over him. "Ethan, it's not just that. I think I've pushed you away." Seeing the wounded expression on his son's face tugged at Jack's heartstrings. "I didn't realize how much my own issues affected you. I thought I was protecting you, but I can see now I was just hiding." Ethan paused the game, finally turning to face Jack. Confusion and hurt flickered in his eyes. "You never talked to me about it. You act like you're fine, but I can tell you're not," he admitted, his voice more vulnerable than Jack expected. "It makes me feel like I cause you pain." The air grew thicker with misunderstandings and assumptions that had built up over the years. "You don't cause me pain, Ethan," Jack responded, urgency invigorating his words. "I've been unable to share my experiences, afraid of burdening you even further. And I see that now." Jack took a deep breath, the sincerity of his resolve swelling within him. "I need you to know I struggle, and there's hope in being honest with each other. After talking to Sarah, I realize we need to connect to face this together." Ethan's brow furrowed as uncertainty danced between them, yet for the first time Jack saw a glimmer of possibility in the depths of his son's gaze. "So you really want to fix this?" Ethan asked, his tone softening, almost incredulous. The question hung in the air, thick with promise and apprehension. Jack nodded firmly, feeling the defiance against the hesitations that had tethered him for too long. "Yes, I do. I want to work through this to be a better father." A sliver of understanding passed between them, but what would follow was an open-ended tapestry waiting to be woven. Jack's heart thudded heavier, both with hope and the fear of vulnerability. Would Ethan be willing to meet him on this fraught path? As Jack examined his son's face, he understood one critical truth. This was only the beginning. What would Ethan reveal about his own feelings? What scars might surface as they began to untangle the complexities of their shared past? Jack braced himself for the unveiling of truths he could not yet fathom, yet knew they were waiting just beneath the surface. Jack felt an electric tension in the air, a palpable shift igniting the space between him and Ethan. They were now at the precipice of something potentially transformative. The gravity of the moment was undeniable. Jack's heart raced as he prepared to navigate this delicate terrain of their emotions. I want to understand what you're feeling, Ethan, Jack pushed gently, his tone a mix of hesitance and a deep-rooted yearning for connection. What's really going on? I can't help if you don't let me in. Ethan's face tightened, the casual exterior cracking just enough for Jack to perceive the churning emotions underneath. It's not that easy, Dad, he retorted, frustration peppering his words. You've shielded yourself for so long. Now you think everything can just be fixed with a conversation? Jack flinched at the accuracy of Ethan's assessment. Perhaps he was foolish to think that drawing things out into the open would mend their relationship, as if it were merely a matter of words. I know it won't fix everything. But if we start talking even a little, we might find a way through this darkness, he said, his resolve hardening. Ethan fell silent, visibly wrestling with the weight of unresolved grievances. His youthful brow furrowed, the mirage of nonchalance dissipating. Jack felt emboldened, almost relieved that they were finally addressing the truths that had loomed like dark clouds over their home. What do you want from me, Dad? Ethan finally asked, the vulnerability in his voice undercut by skepticism. You say you want to be a better father, but how can I trust that this time it's different? That question dug deep into Jack's psyche. How could he assure Ethan that he was committed to this change? I need to show you, Ethan. I want us to work on this as a team. It starts with understanding each other better. I want to know your struggles so I can help you. And I need you to know mine, too. With that declaration, Jack felt a surge of determination coursing through him. If they were to mend their fractured bond, vulnerability was necessary. He'd hidden his own demons for so long, and the time for transparency had come. Like the stuff that happened with Mom? Ethan ventured, his voice barely a whisper now, punctuated with the residual pain of loss and abandonment. Jack's breath caught in his throat. They had rarely spoken of Sarah. Yes, that pain, it's influenced everything. I thought keeping it to myself would protect you, but I see now it only created distance between us. Ethan's eyes lowered to his hands, which fumbled nervously with the game controller. I didn't want you to feel like you had to take care of me through your pain, he mumbled, the walls of his defensiveness beginning to crack. In that moment, Jack realized something significant. Ethan was at the intersection of his own journey. He was also carrying burdens, hidden behind a facade of indifference. What if we both took a step back and started from where we are now? Jack proposed, feeling a flicker of hope. Even if it's hard, we can navigate through this together. Ethan's gaze met Jack's then, the trace of a decision hanging in the fragile air. Okay, he finally replied, his voice steadying. But I don't want us to kid ourselves. If we're going to do this, it has to be real. All in. Jack nodded, the weight of that commitment both daunting and liberating. It was a pact, one that required them to dismantle years of misunderstandings and unspoken grief. But with that shared understanding, Jack felt an unfamiliar lightness, as if he had finally stepped into the daylight after a long dark night. Just as Jack was ready to voice his gratitude for Ethan's openness, the doorbell rang, slicing through the moment like a blade. The interruption felt jarring, a reminder that even the most profound personal developments could be derailed by outside forces. Who could that be? Ethan muttered, glancing uneasily toward the door. As Jack approached, he felt a ripple of discord within himself. If someone were to disrupt this fragile connection before it had even begun to solidify, what would it cost him and Ethan? The anxiety coiled tightly in his stomach. When he opened the door, he was faced with the last person he'd expected to see, an unexpected figure who would alter the course of their fragile reconciliation. Jack's heart raced. Could this new arrival further complicate their journey toward understanding? Standing at the threshold, Jack felt his breath hitch. The person waiting on the stoop wasn't just an unexpected visitor. It was a vestige of his past. Sarah's sister, Margaret, looked as if time had frozen for her, much like Jack had felt since the day he lost Sarah. Their eyes met, and Jack's mind swirled with memories both painful and poignant. I'm sorry to show up unannounced, Margaret began, her voice steady but strained. Her age had begun to catch up with her, yet there remained a fierce determination in her gaze, a family resemblance that reminded him all too well of their shared history. What are you doing here, Marg? He managed, bracing himself for whatever news she might bring. He knew life could throw heavy burdens when least expected, And the last thing he wanted was to add complications to the fragile accord he had started to forge with Ethan. "I came to check on you and Ethan. I've been worried about you both," she said, a soft urgency lacing her tone. Jack felt the irritation bubble within him. This wasn't how he envisioned his evening with Ethan, a visit from someone who might inadvertently reignite old wounds. "Worried about us? Or about reliving the past?" He shot back defensively, crossing his arms. He realized it was unfair to lash out. She was, after all, extending a hand. But vulnerability was still new territory for him, especially with emotions now raw because of Ethan's tentative openness. She stepped into the house, brushing past him. The act felt invasive, igniting a flicker of resentment. But there was something in her eyes that reminded him of the bond they once shared. "It's more than that, Jack. I wasn't sure how to approach this, but I found out something about Ethan's teacher, about your past." Margaret's gaze dropped to the floor, as if fearing what she might unleash. The air in the room thickened. "What do you mean? What past?" Jack probed, his heart racing again. Yet this time with a mix of dread and curiosity. The question sliced through him, laden with implications he couldn't grasp. "His new teacher, Isabel," she said, the name echoing like a distant memory surfacing with the tide. She's someone from our old neighborhood. I didn't want to believe it at first, but she's connected to the things we went through." Jack blinked, confusion flickering before morphing into disbelief. Was this a coincidence? How could fate toy with their lives like this? "That doesn't mean anything," he responded, but even to his own ears, the protest felt hollow. Ethan had been distant, and now the shadows of the past had seeped into his present, someone he would have to confront, someone who could unravel the fragile threads he was trying to weave with his son. "She's been good for Ethan," Margaret continued, sensing Jack's escalating frustration. "But there are things she doesn't know about him. Things you both might need to face together." Her words hung in the air like a storm cloud, pregnant with the promise of revelation. Jack squeezed the back of his neck, an impulsive gesture of tension, grappling with the reality of facing a teaching figure who could reawaken all the grief he had buried. The thought alone felt like a betrayal to Ethan's budding trust. "I need time to process, Marg," he said, knowing that every beat of his heart echoed the recognition that he would have to explore this twist, potentially unearthing fresh wounds in Ethan's heart. Margaret nodded, a glimmer of understanding crossing her face. "Just remember, Jack, sometimes confronting the past is the only way to build a future." As she began to walk away, Jack felt a decision looming before him, heavy with expectation. Could he and Ethan face a new teacher intertwined with their history? Could they turn this revelation into an opportunity instead of an obstacle? The air buzzed with tension, revealing yet another path of vulnerability ahead. He wanted to reach out to Ethan, to call him back into the moment, but he sensed it wouldn't be enough. What he didn't know was that finding the strength to confront Isabel might just uncover the very secrets he had avoided for too long. And there it became clear Ethan would need more than a father. He would need a partner willing to brave the darkness together. As Jack stood at the threshold, two worlds pulling at him and his heart straining against both, he realized that the time had come to face more than just his son's struggles. It was time to face his own demons, reigniting the battles of the past. Would he step forward or remain shackled by fear? The taste of uncertainty lingered as Jack moved through the motions of the following days. Every moment was tinged with the weight of potential confrontation, like an anchor pulling down his resolve. The idea of meeting Isabel loomed ominously over him, and yet, a sliver of curiosity thrummed beneath his apprehension. He found himself examining Ethan closely, their interactions tinged with a nervous energy that Jack couldn't quite place. It was as if Ethan had sensed the impending storm, his laughter less frequent, his joy dimmer. Each time Jack noted the shift, guilt wove its way into his conscience, gnawing at him with the relentless suggestion that he might be failing his son. As the weekend approached, Jack contemplated the conversation he needed to have. He needed to be honest about the past while ensuring Ethan felt protected, grounded in the present. He practiced conversations in his head, attempting to navigate the emotional intricacies without causing Ethan further distress. Yet, how could he explain things he himself barely understood? They sat on the back porch, the setting sun draping the world in a warm glow. Jack shifted in his seat, drawing in the fresh air that carried with it the sweet scent of blooming jasmine. He turned to Ethan, who was sketching quietly in his notebook, the tip of his pencil punctuating the stillness. "Can I see what you're working on?" Jack ventured, hoping to bridge the gap between them. Ethan paused, glancing up with wide eyes that mirrored the innocence Jack so desperately wanted to protect. Slowly, he turned the page to reveal a landscape filled with vibrant colors and free-spirited figures, all hinting at the world inside his son's mind. Jack was struck by the unexpected beauty of it, the creativity bursting at the seams. "This is amazing, buddy," he said, the admiration genuine. The corners of Ethan's mouth turned up slightly, and Jack felt a fleeting warmth at their connection. "I want to draw Isabel next," Ethan admitted quietly. "She's really nice." A wave of mixed emotions surged through Jack, conflicting with both his desire to encourage Ethan and his apprehension about who Isabel really was. "She is, huh? What do you like about her?" Ethan shrugged, a hint of mystery cloaking his response as he refocused on his drawing. "She understands stuff. Like how to make learning fun, I guess. And she really likes art. Think she gets me." Jack traced his fingers over the fading porch wood, the splinters biting into his skin, anchoring him to the moment. "Kids need that," he said, recognizing the glimmer of relief in Ethan's eyes as he spoke about her. "Maybe we should have a chat about her when I get to know her better?" Ethan nodded, biting his lip as if contemplating something deeper. The silence stretched between them, the weight of unspoken fears clinging to the edges. Jack felt the urge to reach out, to envelop Ethan in reassurance, but the guardrails of his own fear held him back. After an agonizing evening, the decision ripped through him in the silence of the night. Margaret had been right. They had to confront the past to embrace the future. Isabel wouldn't just be another complication. She represented a chance for healing that he couldn't afford to dismiss. The next morning, Jack found himself standing in front of the school, his heart racing as the facade of normalcy greeted him. Children played on the swings, laughter ringing through the air, but he felt utterly out of place. The adults around him moved with purpose, weaving into their routines a world he had been a part of, yet felt detached from. With a deep breath, he stepped inside. Navigating the tight hallways, he finally arrived at the teacher's lounge, words swirling in his head, amalgamating into a coherent thought he barely recognized. Would he tell Isabel about their history, about the pain wrapped around their pasts? Would she understand his fear? Before he could turn back, the door creaked open, and there she was, Isabel, framed in the doorway. Their eyes locked, the weight of their shared history, both an anchor and a feather, attuning them to the unspoken truths that lingered. Jack swallowed hard, aware this was the moment that would not only shape his relationship with Ethan, but could potentially reshape his own life. "Isabel?" he finally managed, his voice steady but vulnerable. "Can we talk?" As he stepped into her world, a sense of foreboding washed over him, rooted in both fear and the spark of unexpected possibility. What truths lay ahead, tangled in memories and new beginnings? As the sun pierced through the office window, casting a warm glow over the cluttered desk, Jack Thompson sat reflecting on the past few weeks. In the wake of his turbulent meetings with both Ethan and Sarah, he had stepped onto a path of transformation, one that he never anticipated. Embracing vulnerability and choosing to confront fears had shifted the foundational layers of his identity. He finally understood that personal success was not solely about building his empire or accumulating wealth. Rather, it revolved around authentic relationships. A revelation so profound it shook the very pillars of what he thought defined him. Jack had taken the courageous leap to meet Isabel, the teacher intertwined with both his and Ethan's past. That pivotal conversation had allowed him to unravel layers of misunderstanding, each word a thread woven into a new tapestry of possibilities. Instead of viewing her as a reflection of pain, he began to see Isabel as a bridge, someone who could guide both him and Ethan toward healing. Dismissed notions of success began to fade. He realized the importance of honesty not just toward others but within himself. Vulnerability had become his new currency. He discovered joy in revealing raw emotions rather than shielding them. The day after his conversation with Isabel, Jack organized a family dinner. He invited Ethan, hoping to solidify the connection they had tentatively begun to rebuild. As they sat down, the energies shifted. Ethan, still wary but open, leaned in, giving Jack a glimpse of the son he longed to know fully. "Dad, you really want to fix things with me, right?" Ethan asked, his fingers nervously tapping on the table. "Yes, more than anything," Jack replied, courage swirling in his chest. "And I want to support you in every way possible, starting with honesty." The tension melted away as Jack shared stories of his past, of grief following Sarah's death, emphasizing that no emotion should be pushed aside. He asked Ethan to share his thoughts, allowing the dialogue to flow freely, and for the first time, Jack sensed a wall beginning to crumble. Ethan spoke openly about his struggles at school, the heavy gray clouds of loneliness blanketing their home until now. With each revelation, Jack felt the burden of his own fears lift ever so slightly. A shared understanding blossomed between them, weaving tighter bonds of trust. "Want to try art together sometime?" Ethan asked hesitantly after sharing the struggles, a light of hope flickering in his eyes. "Isabel thinks I have a knack for it." Jack smiled, pure happiness flooding him. "Absolutely, let us do it. I'd love to learn from you." The acknowledgement of shared passion sparked an ember of excitement that lingered in the air. The pain of so long ago became a lesson of strength rather than a chain of shame. Jack's heart swelled, meeting his son's gaze with determination. This was the beginning, not merely a continuation of the past, but a genuine commitment to endeavor for a brighter future together. Weeks turned to months, and Jack embraced his role as a father with renewed purpose. He employed Isabel's ideas within his teachings to Ethan, sharing not only art but insights they could tackle side by side. Their journey unfolded, each brush stroke on canvas symbolizing healing. Gradually, their relationship evolved beyond mere father and son. They became a team, each navigating life's currents together. The fruits of this journey extended beyond the home as Jack began attending school events, engaging socially with other parents. Overcoming the initial self-consciousness, he even forged connections with others in the community, finding joy in the commonality of shared struggles with fatherhood and loss. Jack was no longer attempting to shield himself. He confronted the past, welcoming vulnerability and affirming that love was an expansive reservoir. As the school year came close to an end, Jack stood at the podium during the farewell assembly, a newfound audience of parents and faculty in front of him. Embracing the moment, he shared his journey, the way vulnerability opened pathways to connection, highlighting his profound honor of being Ethan's father. The applause that followed wasn't just for a speech. It was a recognition of growth. Jack felt a solid confidence settle within him, no longer trapped in the shadows of his past. He now basked in the light of acceptance, strength, and love. The transformation was palpable, a celebration of several victories achieved. Jack had reinvented himself as not just a successful businessman but as a devoted father, a strong ally to both his son and the people he cared about. He had conquered his fears, proving to himself that genuine relationships carried the true essence of success. With a renewed sense of purpose and confidence, Jack stepped into the next chapter of his life full of possibilities, empowered by authentic connections forged through honesty and shared experiences. The moment required a demand to the audience that had shared in this journey with him. This was the moment for connection, not just between him and Ethan but also with each of you. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, and keep these transformative narratives coming. Comment on your reactions and theories about this journey. We want to hear your thoughts. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, because moments of true personal growth deserve to be celebrated and shared. Don't wait even one more second. Every action you take fuels the dialogue of overcoming adversity, growth, and connection.